A $14,000 debt, a fatal stab straight into the most sacred thing I ever believed in, the trust she secretly buried. That number wasn't just a financial burden, it was proof of half a year of lies, evidence that she had lived a perfect parallel life, so perfect that I, her completely trusting husband, was made a fool in my own home. I built this marriage on a foundation of absolute transparency, only to realize that beneath that perfect facade, a secret had silently rotted everything from within, turning love into ruins and leaving me forever unable to trust again. This isn't just about money. Deeper down, it's about the invisible threads connecting two people. Threads that were once so strong yet snapped because of a secret. This is the self-confession of a man who once had everything and then lost it all because of a debt. That wasn't just about money. I'm Jordan, a 38-year-old civil engineer. The bustling, sun-drenched city of Dallas is where I've spent most of my life. From the outside, my life was probably the epitome of stability. Many people dream of the perfect picture of a typical American family. I had a solid job, a stable income enough to support a small family. Heather, my wife, was the woman I loved with all my heart, the one who had been with me through thick and thin, building this home for 7 years. She's a talented, vibrant, and passionate woman, a freelance designer with endless creative ideas. Although her income wasn't as stable as mine, some months she'd barely make a few bucks, other months it would be abundant. We were used to it. I never placed a heavy financial burden on her shoulders. I always said, just do what you love and I'll take care of the rest, as long as you're happy and can grow your career. And I truly did that. I was proud to be the family's solid financial pillar. We had 2 children, a boy and a girl, who were our greatest pride, the light of our lives. Our eldest son, Daniel, 5, is smart and active with golden blonde hair and sparkling blue eyes like his mother. Our youngest daughter, Emily, 3, is adorable and full of smiles, always chirping like a bird. We had a charming little house in a peaceful suburb with a spacious yard for the kids to run around, where warm evenings and their clear laughter echoed. Our family SUV, our daily transportation, was almost paid off, just a few months away from being entirely ours. I had plans to refinance the house to lower the interest rate, save for the future, and I felt like everything was on track. Every month, I was the one who sat down meticulously, going over the numbers, creating a detailed budget down to the smallest expense. It was a habit, my way of managing our family's finances. I believe that transparency and clear planning were the key to everything, helping us avoid unnecessary trouble. I always shared every expense with Heather, and she did too. We discussed small investments together, our children's savings fund, and bigger plans for the future, like building an extra study room for the kids or buying a larger house when they grew older. I always thought there were no secrets between us. We shared everything from the smallest worries to the grandest dreams. I believe that this absolute trust was the solid foundation of our marriage, an invisible but strong thread connecting us. Every evening after dinner, I would often sit with Heather in the living room, sometimes on the old sofa we bought when we were first married, sometimes at the kitchen table. I'd tell her about work, about ongoing construction projects, about complex cost calculations on the job site, about the challenges and successes. She'd do the same, talking about new clients, unique design ideas, and the difficulties she faced in finding projects. We'd analyze problems together, offer advice to each other. We were a team, a unified whole, overcoming every challenge together, sharing every joy and sorrow. Or at least that's what I thought. In those moments, I felt my life was truly complete, truly peaceful, a life I had painstakingly built and always cherished. There were times when Heather complained about the fierce competition in freelance design, about how difficult it was getting to find new clients. She talked about projects being suddenly canceled, about delayed payments, about the pressure to constantly innovate to avoid falling behind. I always encouraged her, "Don't worry, my love. Take your time. What matters is that you have passion and you love your work. If there's any difficulty, just tell me. I'll always be here facing it with you." She would smile, her eyes full of gratitude and trust. I believe those words of encouragement were enough to make her feel safe and supported. Deep down, I was always proud of our family's financial transparency. We never hid any expenses, any debts from each other. I believe that honesty and openness were the secrets to keeping a marriage strong. We had overcome many difficulties together, from when I suddenly lost my job a few years ago to when Heather faced a minor health issue. Each time we would sit down together, frankly acknowledge the problem, and find a solution. I never thought there would come a day that something could be beyond my control and beyond my understanding of my own wife's life. I even clearly remember a time Heather was worried she didn't have enough money to buy her mother a birthday gift. I immediately offered to help, saying, "My money is your money, don't hesitate." She hugged me tightly, expressing deep gratitude. It was those moments that further cemented my belief in our transparency and bond. I never imagined that beneath that perfect facade, a huge secret was silently gnawing away. It was like building a strong, sturdy house, but not knowing that the foundation was being eaten away by termites from within. Until one day. It was a scorching Tuesday afternoon in May when I decided to check my personal credit report. The initial purpose was just to prepare documents for refinancing our home, a significant financial move I had planned for a long time, aimed at lowering interest rates and saving for the long-term future. I was ready for a clean report reflecting my and Heather's diligent financial management. I hit enter, waiting for the website to load the data. The computer screen appeared, and the feeling of peace and security I had always been so proud of in my life suddenly turned to ash like a sandcastle swept away by the waves. My eyes were glued to the computer screen. That line of text, that specific number, hit me like a gut punch. It wasn't an error, not a mistake. It was a brand new credit card opened in Heather's name, my wife. It had been opened only 6 months ago. Not a long time, but long enough to hide a terrifying secret. And the debt, over $14,000. I almost couldn't believe my eyes. My brain immediately switched to analysis mode, scanning everything. Credit card opened 6 months ago. With such a large debt, Heather had never not once mentioned this. She had never talked about opening a new card or about any financial difficulties. She had always appeared calm, still smiling and laughing as if nothing was wrong. Every month I regularly checked our joint bank account, closely monitoring every income and expense. Everything seemed normal, no unusual signs of large expenditures or strange credit card payments. My salary still regularly entered the account, bills were still paid on time. Everything was fine, as I always believed, as she always reassured me. I wondered, how could she hide such a large debt without me knowing? Everything was perfectly secret. A mistake, I asked myself in a desperate attempt to reassure myself. Maybe a system error, a common name somewhere. But deep down, a sense of unease crept in, a cold shiver running down my spine. I could feel adrenaline starting to pump through my body, my heart racing, my breathing quickening. A feeling of fear and anger began to brew, stronger than ever. I hurriedly printed out that credit card statement, line by line, number by number, every transaction starkly visible. January, a few $100s for design software. February, a few $100 more for Daniel's school supplies, saying it was a surprise gift for our son. March, shopping for Emily's clothes, saying they were on sale. April, May, June, larger expenses for things I had no idea about. Minimum payments were made, just enough to keep the debt from becoming overdue, but never significantly reducing it. There were even expenses for home decor that she said she made herself. My hands trembled holding the stack of papers, feeling like I was holding a ticking time bomb with the fuse almost burnt out. I couldn't stay in the office for another minute. I asked to leave early, driving home in a daze. The familiar road from the office to home, with its lush green trees and peaceful houses, suddenly became terrifyingly long and unfamiliar. Every turn, every traffic light seemed to want to hold me back, prolonging the anxiety, dread, and anger that was gradually rising within me. I tried to calm myself, tried to think about what I would say, how I would react, but my mind was blank. Only the pounding of my heart and the haunting image of $14,000 swirling in my head. When I got home, Heather was in the kitchen preparing dinner. The clatter of knives, the gurgling of water, the delicious smell of grilled meat filled the house. The children were playing in the living room, their giggles echoing. All those familiar sounds and smells suddenly became terrifyingly alien, like a play unfolding while I stood backstage, knowing exactly what was about to happen. I placed the statement on the dining table facing her. "Heather," I said, my voice trying to remain as calm as possible, but I knew it had shattered. It was trembling, dry, and full of accusation I couldn't hide. "Can you explain this to me?" Heather turned, the smile on her face fading as she saw the papers in my hand. Her eyes briefly showed panic, then quickly shifted to guilt and fear. Her face turned pale, completely devoid of color, like a stone statue. She was silent, a heavy silence stretching endlessly, engulfing the entire room, swallowing the children's laughter. I could hear my heart pounding in my chest, the blood rushing in my ears. The whole space seemed to stop, leaving only extreme tension and painful waiting. Then tears began to stream down her cheeks. First a few drops, then an unstoppable, uncontrollable flow. She sobbed, burying her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking. She tried to speak, but only choked sobs came out, no words. I stood there motionless, watching the woman I had placed all my trust in breaking down before my eyes, and with her a part of my heart was also shattering. And then, amidst her choked sobs, she confessed, I'm sorry, Jordan. I opened the card after losing a big client." Her voice dwindled, almost a whisper, as if she feared her own words. Each word was like a knife twisting in my gut. She explained that it was a very large interior design project, a significant source of income that she had relied on to cover personal expenses and contribute to major family costs. When that project was suddenly canceled without warning, she panicked. The fear of failure and of disappointing me overwhelmed all reason. She was afraid that I would worry, that I would blame her for not being competent enough, that my financial burden would become even heavier. She didn't want me to bear an additional financial burden, especially since I had always been the one to take care of everything. She said she felt useless, unable to contribute anything to the family, and that's why she wanted to handle it herself. "I didn't want you to worry. You already work so hard," she said, her voice faltering. "I thought I could handle it myself." Initially, she only intended to use the credit card for a few $100s to buy new design software tools she thought would help her quickly find new clients, making up for the lost income. "I thought it would only be for a short time, honey. I'd pay it all back right away." But then, like a slippery slope, everything just slid. Small installments for online courses to improve her skills, items for the kids that I didn't know about but she thought were necessary so they wouldn't fall behind their friends, smaller personal expenses when she felt stressed and wanted to reward herself with a little comfort or simply to maintain her stable appearance. Little by little, everything spun out of control. From a few $100s initially, the number just kept growing relentlessly. I thought I could manage. I really tried, Jordan. I looked for extra work, I cut down my own spending, but everything just got harder. I didn't know what to do. I was scared. That statement, it was like another knife plunged into my heart. Hidden. She had intended to hide it from me. For the past 6 months, she had been living a parallel life, a life I knew nothing about, a life from which I was completely excluded. For half a year, I had lived in a bubble, an illusion of transparency and trust, while in reality, a secret was slowly gnawing away at the foundation of our marriage. I felt like a fool, a deceived man in my own home, in the very relationship I had given my whole heart to. I didn't scream. Not a single yell escaped my throat. My throat was dry, bitter, as if someone was choking me. I also didn't get angry, at least not the explosive, destructive anger that other men might display in that moment. I just stood there motionless, a cold, numb feeling overwhelming me from head to toe. It was the feeling of being betrayed, stabbed in the back, but not with a physical knife, but with something invisible, sharper and infinitely more painful: deceit, distrust, concealment. It wasn't because of the $14,000. Although it was a large sum, a considerable burden for a family building a future like ours, I knew we could overcome it. I'm a civil engineer. I can earn money. I could work overtime, take on more projects. We could tighten our belts, save every penny, and everything would be fine. I always believed in my ability to bear the family's financial responsibility. I had once told Heather, "We'll get through everything together. Money isn't the biggest problem. The real pain wasn't in the number, not in the potential loss of money. It was in the fact that she had lived 2 parallel lives for half a year. For half a year, Heather was still the gentle wife, the caring mother to my children, whom I loved, still eating dinner with me, watching movies with me on the old sofa, laughing and reading to the kids before they went to bed. There were still evenings when we lay next to each other, telling each other about the day, about plans for tomorrow, about the small dreams we cherished. There were still tender gestures, tight hugs. But at the same time, she was also someone else. Someone silently bearing a huge financial burden and hiding it perfectly from her partner. Every time I asked, "Is everything okay, my love?" she would smile, her eyes sparkling as if there was nothing to worry about, and nod, "It's fine, honey. Everything's good." Every time I held her close, whispering words of love, words of reassurance. "We're a team, Heather. We'll get through everything together." She would still squeeze my hand tightly, her eyes full of trust. And then I realized all those moments were false. All those nods, those smiles, those hand squeezes were shrouded by a suffocating secret. While I absolutely trusted the concept of togetherness, of absolute transparency in marriage, she was silently swimming in a sea of debt, struggling alone with fear and despair, just because she was afraid of disappointing me. That feeling, it was like an invisible but deep crack in my soul. It didn't bleed, didn't cause physical pain, but it tore apart the curtain of trust I had painstakingly built over the years. A part of me died at that moment. I felt deeply hurt, not by money, but by the loss of trust, something I always valued more than any material possessions, more than career and status. I looked at Heather. She was still sobbing, but I couldn't hold her close as usual. An invisible distance had formed between us, a distance I didn't know if it could ever be bridged again. I wasn't angry because she made a financial mistake. Anyone can make mistakes in life. I understood that better than anyone. We're human after all, no one's perfect. I was willing to be forgiving, willing to work with her to find solutions to any problem. I was willing to take on more if needed. I was angry because she didn't trust me enough to share that mistake. I was angry because she didn't see me as a true partner, someone she could rely on, someone she could face every difficulty with no matter how small or large. She chose to bear the burden herself to hide it instead of opening up and working with me to find a solution. That made me feel sidelined, disrespected like an outsider in my own family's life, someone she needed to manage information for rather than a partner to share with. In those moments of painful silence, I remembered the words I had told her countless times, "Just tell me everything, I'm always here for you." But she didn't. She chose the lonely path, handling it herself, and pushed me away. That left me not just disappointed, but deeply wounded. Trust, like a fragile thread once broken, is very difficult to retie without leaving a knot and ugly scar. And that scar I knew would remain forever. I had always been steadfast rational, always believing in clarity and transparency. But now all those values were shaking. I felt betrayed not just by Heather, but by my very belief in the perfection of this marriage. My eyes looked at the children sleeping soundly in the living room, imagining them growing up in a family where parents no longer trusted each other. That pain was even greater than the financial debt. We tried. I know both Heather and I wanted to mend that crack, wanted to save this marriage. The very next day, although my emotions were still a mess, I tried to keep myself calm. We made an appointment with a financial advisor, a neutral third party, someone who could look at the problem more objectively, unclouded by personal emotions. He, an older man with silver hair and kind eyes, helped us analyze the complex financial situation, creating a detailed repayment plan, a clear roadmap to get out of that $14,000 hole. I cut every unnecessary expense, tightened our budget to the maximum. From lavish weekend dinners out, aimless shopping trips, expensive movies, or coffee with friends, to even costly personal hobbies like golf or buying electronics, everything was put on the drastic cut list. I started working extra on weekends, taking on small additional projects, odd jobs after hours. Every day after my main job on the construction site, I would sit at my computer looking for more consulting contracts, small architectural design jobs. I even considered taking night shifts at a nearby factory just to earn more money. I wanted to pay off this debt quickly, not just because of the financial burden weighing on my shoulders, but also because I wanted to quickly remove the heavy stone pressing down on our relationship. I told myself, "Jordan, try hard. Everything will be okay. Trust can be rebuilt." I believed that time and effort would heal everything. Heather did too. She took on more small freelance jobs, accepting projects with lower fees just to earn more income. She also started looking for side jobs, evening shifts, even data entry or online sales to increase her earnings. I could see her trying her best. I could feel her remorse and determination in every action. In the evenings, she would sit by the computer late into the night, the dark circles under her eyes growing more pronounced, her body visibly thinner. She apologized endlessly, saying she regretted it deeply, that it was the biggest mistake of her life. She promised she would never hide anything from me again. She cried a lot, and I tried to comfort her, though a wound remained unhealed in my heart. We talked more about money, about financial plans. Every expense was made public, every transaction reported to both of us. We tried to rebuild the transparency that had been broken for so long. We even attended a few marriage counseling sessions. The therapist tried to help us mend the emotional wound, rebuild trust. Heather was very cooperative. She opened up, telling all her fears, the pressures she had endured alone, about her worry about not being able to contribute financially like me. I also tried to listen, tried to understand. I knew my distrust was also hurting her. The therapist talked a lot about the importance of forgiveness, about rebuilding communication bridges. I nodded. I understood, but putting it into practice was much harder. But in my heart, that crack was still there. It didn't disappear with time. It didn't heal like a physical wound might. It smoldered, existing like an ugly scar in my mind. No matter how hard I tried, no matter how hard I tried to trust again, the feeling of suspicion always lingered. Every time I saw Heather holding her phone, I unconsciously had a thought, is there anything else I don't know? I wondered if she still had something hidden, or if it was simply my haunting obsession. Every time she received a call or a strange message, even from friends, I couldn't stop myself from being suspicious. I felt terrible for having those thoughts, but I couldn't stop them. Suspicion, like a poison, slowly seeped into every corner of the relationship, making me unable to fully open up as before. I knew it wasn't fair to Heather. She was trying her best to fix things, but I couldn't control that feeling. Trust once lost is so hard to regain completely, especially when it's broken by concealment. Heather apologized endlessly every day. She cooked my favorite dishes, took better care of me, and the children tried to make amends in every way possible. But those apologies, no matter how sincere, no matter how deeply they came from her heart, weren't enough to fill the void within me. I didn't need an apology. I needed to feel respected, to feel that I was seen as a true partner, an equal, someone she could share everything with, not just a financial manager she had to hide her mistakes and burdens from. We tried to mend things, tried to go back to how we were, but every action of hers, whether it was remorse or an effort to make amends, seemed to remind me of the hidden secret. I couldn't look at her with the same innocent eyes as before. A thin, invisible but very real curtain had obscured my vision, separating me from the wife I once trusted implicitly. That curtain, no matter how hard we tried, couldn't be torn apart. Daily life gradually became a series of repetitive activities, no longer with deep connection, no longer with heartfelt sharing. We talked about the children, about work, about bills, but deep conversations, emotional sharing, shared dreams had gradually disappeared. The silence became heavier, longer. I realized that we were living in a shell, the shell of a happy family, a couple who had overcome difficulties. But inside, I felt lonelier than ever, lonely in my own home next to my own wife. I had lost the feeling of "we are a team" that I always cherished. It had turned into me and her, two separate individuals trying to live under one roof. We did it. After 14 grueling, persistent months working tirelessly from early morning until late at night, we had almost paid off that $14,000 debt. The financial burden had significantly lessened. We could breathe a sigh of relief. Life seemed to be back on track. Rare dates, trips to the park with the kids, forced smiles had gradually become more natural. Anyone looking at us would think we had weathered the storm, had returned to being a happy family as before. But our relationship couldn't heal to its original state. That crack in my heart never completely disappeared. It became a part of me, a part of our story. I still always felt an invisible distance between Heather and me, a distance that nothing seemed to be able to bridge. I no longer believed in togetherness as before. The idea that we were a team with no secrets, facing everything together, had collapsed. It had been replaced by caution, by a touch of skepticism, by an invisible wariness. When things stabilized, I realized that lack of transparency, the secret Heather had tried to hide, had eroded the foundation of our marriage from within. It wasn't just a crack, but a breakdown of the root, the foundation I had always believed was the strongest. Every time I looked at Heather, I saw her image at that moment, tears streaming down her face, her voice trembling as she admitted the debt, and all those forced smiles, those deceptive reassurances for half a year. That memory haunted me. It didn't allow me to fully place my trust in her again. I felt exhausted, not from work or money, but from constantly grappling with my own thoughts and emotions. I couldn't escape the vicious cycle of suspicion and hurt. Love was still there, but it was no longer whole, no longer strong enough to mend everything. I tried very hard to get over it. I told myself she had repented, she had made amends. But every time I looked at Heather, I saw a stranger, someone who had deliberately deceived me. My sleep was no longer deep. I often woke up in the middle of the night, my mind swirling with unanswered questions. Was there another secret she hadn't told me? Was she hiding other things from me? Those thoughts eroded me daily, exhausting me. One evening, when the children were fast asleep in their cozy room, the house was silent. Heather was sitting on the sofa reading a book. I sat across from her, looking into the eyes I had once trusted implicitly, eyes I had once seen filled with sincerity. She was still there, still the wife I had once loved, but my eyes couldn't find the reflection of the absolute trust I once placed in her. I took a deep breath, feeling as if I was inhaling the heavy air of the past years, and spoke the words I had harbored for so long, words I knew would change everything, would put an end to a chapter in my life. "I forgive you, Heather," I said, my voice low and clear, without a trace of anger, only endless weariness and regret. "I truly forgive your mistake for that debt. We got through it together, didn't we?" Heather looked at me, her eyes filled with hope, as if she was waiting for a reconciliation, a new beginning, a return to the early days. She nodded, a tear rolling down her cheek, but it was a tear of hope, of relief. But I knew that wasn't all. "But I'm not the man I used to be anymore," I continued, feeling a part of my soul shattering. "And you are no longer the wife I completely trusted. What's lost between us is greater than money. It's trust, it's wholeness. I tried, you tried, but this crack is too deep. I can't live with the feeling of suspicion forever, and I don't want you to live in remorse trying to mend something that can't be healed." There were no screams, no arguments, no loud debates. Just the bare, cold truth, spoken gently but sharply like a knife. I saw Heather's eyes fill with tears, tears that streamed endlessly. Tears of heartbreak, no longer with hope. She didn't refute, didn't plead, just nodded in silence, as if she too understood that this was the inevitable outcome. We signed the divorce papers 2 months later. All procedures took place quietly and respectfully. There was no dispute over assets, no bitter custody battle over the children. We agreed to co-parent Daniel and Emily, ensuring they would still receive full love and attention from both their mother and father. We were still their parents, but no longer husband and wife. Not because of money, not because the debt was almost paid off, but because we had lost the root, the most solid foundation of a marriage: absolute trust and complete transparency. I had lost the partner I once trusted more than myself, and she had lost a husband who had placed his complete faith in her. My life, Heather's, and our two children's lives took a different turn. I still live in Dallas, still a civil engineer, still tirelessly working on projects and numbers. But now every time I look at a number or report, I remember that costly lesson. The lesson about the fragility of trust and the terrifying destructive power of a hidden secret. Daniel and Emily are still the light of my life, but I know a part of their childhood has been affected by this breakdown. I always wonder later, when they grow up and understand, will they comprehend the real reason behind their parents' separation? Will they ever have to face a similar betrayal of trust? I still remember the evenings Heather and I sat together planning our future. Dreams of a bigger house, trips with the kids, a peaceful old age. All those dreams now are just fragments in my mind. I know life will go on, I will have to keep moving forward, but I will never forget this lesson. The financial debt was paid, but the debt of trust can never be repaid. And that is the biggest, most painful debt of my life. A secret, no matter how small the fear it starts from, no matter how well-intentioned its concealment, when it grows in the dark, it doesn't just put you in debt with the bank. It can also make you lose things, far more valuable things that cannot be measured in money. It can cost you a part of yourself, a part of the person you once called your life partner, and even an entire family you painstakingly built. Always remember, transparency and trust are the diamonds in every relationship. Never trade them away for any reason. Because there are some debts that aren't money, but trust, and once lost, it's very difficult or even impossible to ever repay. This was my story. Did you take any lessons from it for yourself? If this story touched your heart, or if you have any thoughts you'd like to share, don't hesitate to leave a comment below. Please hit like and share this story so others can also learn from it. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on the next dramatic and meaningful stories I'll bring to you. Thank you for listening. See you in the next videos. Goodbye.